All right, cool. You're running the show, Mike. You have the stories, you have the questions, you have everything. We literally are now here.
Absolutely. That way we can do none of it. Awesome.
Your discretion disposal.
Awesome.
All right.
We're at his. He can do with us what he wills.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening?
Do I have your consent?
I feel like
never.
I've
never given my consent to anyone.
I feel like as big as he is,
But that's
at
kind
least
of the way you like
as
it,
it
though,
relates
too.
to me, he kind of just could do whatever he wants.
That's the.
I don't feel like I had ever had an option in that scenario.
So I think it's one of Joe Rogan's greatest bits of all time. Is when he says, if Brock Lesnar wants to rape you, you're getting fucked. There's no way around.
Yeah.
You are not stopping him. And I
agree.
was like, fuck, that's funny.
Yeah.
That is some funny shit.
Yeah.
Because it's true.
Yeah, he's not
You
wrong
are
there.
not stopping that man from
No.
doing anything he wants without a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with probably a lot of bullets.
Yeah.
He'll
Yeah.
take a shot and be
I
like,
think
what the
so.
fuck are we doing? That
or
man is a
or
beast.
a great ankle hold. Apparently, that also takes him down.
He just didn't know what he was doing. That poor guy.
I'm gonna rape you. Why are you going for my ankle?
What's happening?
The only way I've ever seen you
Lose ever.
anything.
Yeah.
All right, start it.
All right. Welcome to Sacrilicious. If you have nothing nice to say, you are in the right place. My name is Mike.
I am right. Oh, you are?
He pointed to me.
Did he?
Yeah, but it's your turn.
Sorry. It was more of that I was just thinking, how are we going to do this because you didn't clap?
This is true.
There was no clap.
Yeah, I was going to try
Where's your raptor arms?
Yeah.
I was so distracted by the not clapping.
Yeah.
But he does it with the bet.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah,
Anyway, I'm Ryan.
and I'm Joe.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome, guys.
Hello. Hi. Still not gonna clap though? I ain't gonna let this up.
No clap today. Yeah.
He doesn't even
see,
need it.
There it goes. Yeah.
Which, by the way, just so you know, that's the other way you can clap.
That's the other
when
way?
there's a microphone in
Okay.
front of you. Like,
Excellent.
I don't know another way. We're slightly excited because everything went smoothly
Yeah.
technologically, which has never happened.
Yeah,
for
it doesn't
us.
ever happen.
So this is pretty great.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we're in a better mood.
I'm also excited
Oh.
because now I can light a cigar. It's time. Okay. So, what do you have for us today, Mike?
Man, there could be a lot of different things here, but it says, what is the dumbest thing you've had to explain to a classmate?
Where are you
or
reading
friend?
this from?
From your Ask Reddit.
Oh, I thought he swore.
That's what
Did
you
you hear
wanted.
it? From
I 100%.
From your ass, Reddit.
Where'd you
I
get it?
thought he said
I
from-
pulled it out of your ass. Reddit. Wait, ass?
I heard ass. I definitely heard ass from your ass, Reddit.
That did totally.
Oh
did.
my gosh.
That was hysterical.
Okay, so what did my ass say? Say it
Yeah,
again.
sorry, I was so distracted.
Well, I forgot now, too.
Yeah.
What is the dumbest thing you've had to explain to a coworker or classmate?
Ooh, I like that question.
I thought you would. I don't have any, but you probably have plenty.
Oh my gosh, you have some, Mike. If you just
I
think
do.
about
It takes me too long.
just
Yeah,
takes you.
I have to think about it.
Not great for podcasts,
Yeah.
but I mean, you know,
Yeah.
to think through all that. But the dumbest thing you've ever had to explain.
Yeah, I think it was when I had to explain to my buddies who Ken Block was because he
Mm-hmm.
recently passed away. And I was like, Ken Block passed away. And they were
he's,
like,
he's calling back to
"Who's-"
another podcast reference. You know this. This is. If you just want to
What?
say you do another podcast called "You Won't Hate It," you
no.
can just say that.
No, I was explaining how dumb my friends are to not know who Ken Block, the most famous drifter of all time. It's okay. He's a race car driver.
No. He's literally a drifter, like wandering the streets of
He's
America. That's
no wonder
That's,
he
weird.
died.
That's why nobody knows him. You don't know Ken? He's been wandering the streets forever.
You know, Ken, he wanders around Blackstone. Yeah, I know Ken. Totally.
I can't believe you don't know his name.
Gosh, that is an odd one.
All right, let's start with.
I feel like it
forget
happens
the
so
dumbest.
often.
Start with anything, like because I don't think that'll trigger it. What's something you've had to explain to somebody, like a coworker, or classmate instead of somebody?
Yeah,
else?
but I
So
think
anybody-
maybe
classmate.
just
I haven't really
anybody.
explained anything.
I would-
How about
I
from
was
a
the guy.
How
they were
about to a
explaining.
church member?
I was like, that's true. I did have to explain to a church member one time about why we had to have lights on the stage
Oh, interesting.
because they didn't get it. Like
That's
it didn't make
awesome.
sense that we had lights because they were like,
Yeah.
I'm having seizures from the lights. Like, and this is at a Baptist church. It's not like we're having some light show.
Did they really? They were like,
Yeah.
I'm having seizures?
I'm like, well, they weren't. But
That's
that's
what-
what
yeah,
they,
that's
that was
what-
like the argument for like, I'm worried I'm having a seizure. And I'm like, because we had like par 64s, cans that just
Yeah,
light
right.
down onto the stage. And, you know, we turn them up or down like at different
Like, do
times.
you want us to turn the lights off?
I didn't, nothing
follow-up
flashing, nothing
question.
moving. So I had to be like, no, I literally had to be like, this might not be the church for you because we're gonna have lights on the stage.
Yeah.
It's along the same. It's in the same vein of when you have to. Which this is okay to have these questions and talk through them. It's the like, hey, worship seems a little bit showy today, or something like that, because that's a normal. It's like,
Sure.
But at some point, you're like, well, what didn't you like about it? Because when you,
That's what you're getting at.
Most of the time when they bring it up, they don't have anything specific, and it's very vague. So the more you can get somebody to say, like, okay, what is it exactly that you thought was showy about this set?
Yeah.
And this one woman told, my sister was leading worship at the time, and told my sister, well, all the girls on stage are look really slutty. And we're like,
She wasn't
okay,
wrong.
Wow.
I was there that day. She was
first
right.
of all,
Mostly her sister.
my sister, you could see her forehead.
She's so modest.
You could see, like,
She's
just
crazy
her
modest.
forehead.
Yeah, exactly.
and literally has reason to not be modest
Yeah.
and is crazy modest.
And the other girls on stage were in like sweatshirts.
Wow.
And she just could. And we said, well, what do you think is slutty? And then it turns out it wasn't really what they were wearing. They were like moving with the music.
Oh,
Elvis.
And I was like,
Elvis.
wait,
that's
so they're
Elvis stuff.
But like, what are
His hips.
How are they
Yeah.
moving? That's what I said. I was like, I didn't see any gyration. And she's like, well, I just feel like worship should be done in such a respectful way. And I'm like, that we all hate it?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Well, that goes
couldn't
back
believe
to it goes back to the plank in your own eye. I really mean this.
Yeah.
For sure.
People want to regulate. Christians want to regulate the world before they
Ironically-
regulate themselves.
Ironically, she was naked the whole time we were having this conversation. That's what was weird. And
I
was
will
like,
say
wow.
this is a weird thing to say, but back at Willow Creek when I was in Chicago, they were talking about starting the first Gen X church. I forgot what it was called. I don't remember the name of it at the time. That's how long ago that was. Anyways, so they're starting to have it, and they're meeting in the chapel, the old chapel. So
Yeah.
Will has a massive property, but they even have like a wedding chapel. I've never thought, and I don't even think this young lady was doing anything wrong, but I've never thought and I'm a young man, I'm single, I'm not like lusting after all the worship people. When it's a mega church, they have gorgeous women on stage, but they're just dressed normal. They're
Well,
just pretty
you,
girls.
You are. You're just not saying anything. That's fine.
No, it's fine. And so, but it's the winter time. We're in the chapel. They haven't turned the heat on. She's wearing a sweater, but it's still noticeable.
She's cutting glass.
It's still noticeable. That was the one time, and she was beautiful. That was the one time I'm like, she's not doing anything wrong, but I am having a problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's not her problem, but I am having a problem.
And I think it's interesting, and you probably didn't realize it then, but I think it's so funny because now I'd be like, oh, this is 100% me.
That's all it was.
In
just
the
me.
past, I'd be kind of like, it's probably 50-50. Like, I've got a problem, but she needs to be mindful.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what, of
No.
you being a dipshit?
Yeah.
No, she doesn't. Sorry, she doesn't have to be.
She's cold. She's wearing a sweater.
100%.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know, like, I literally, but I remember being like, and even then, I remember like being like, this is my issue, because there's nothing she's doing wrong. But at the same time, if I were her friend off stage, I would probably say like, hey, like, you're not doing anything wrong, but I'm gonna do you a solid.
It gives a whole new meaning to plank in the eye.
That's just
Right?
about to be edited out. That is being edited
What? Is
out.
that bad?
That is.
I thought that. No, it's, I was just
making
saying.
That's not making the show.
I feel like that's perfectly fine.
That's all that is going to just be on, like, that gives a whole new meaning to
Just one long.
but I will say another one. I thought, just since we're asking this question, I had a youth pastor. We had to have a sit down, and I did it in a certain way where I had to say, okay, before I give you any instruction, I want to give you a chance to share your perspective. Tell me why you believe in Sasquatch.
Oh, this is one of my favorites.
wow.
You've told me this before, and I love it so much.
I gave him a full-on hour and a half to 2 hours to tell me why he believes in Sasquatch and why he spends a lot of his time looking for Sasquatch.
Yeah,
Because
this guy actually went on
Squatching.
Sasquatch hunting. Like,
Oh, nice.
Like this dude was so into it.
not a show. trips.
He would like
Pay
take
to go
a
on trips.
vacation. Like this is my
That's
paid
how he-
vacation, and I'm gonna go
How do
look
we become that tour guide?
for Sasquatch.
We literally
Right?
don't have to do
Wouldn't that
anything
be
except to walk around the
awesome?
mountains with somebody, and they
And-
need to pay us a ton of money.
And cut in my buddies to run around as Sasquatch because I would. All of them would do it. Every one of my friends would be like, "Dude, buy me the suit, and I will run around."
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and so this was the challenge is I had to be like, I'd explain, okay, I basically said, none of this is, he has a master's degree, by the way.
Here's
Master
what's
of
funny,
Divinity.
though.
He's
See,
smart guy.
these I love.
Be
Guys
honest.
that are well
Yeah.
educated. I love this.
You were totally open to him having a good argument, right?
I was excited.
Yeah.
yeah.
I want, listen, I want evidence. I'm for everything.
what
Like,
I
I want to be
love.
like,
Yeah.
I'm like, about all this. Like, if someone
Yeah.
said to me, like, I can prove Jesus didn't rise from the dead, I have actual evidence, I'm like, I'm dying to see this.
Yeah.
Like, show me. I do not predetermine. And I think it makes it better for actually arguing. You know what I mean? Like, if you're really open to what somebody has to say.
Yeah.
Because then you're just taking it in. You're listening. So anyway, so after an hour and a half to 2 hours, I was like, okay. I award you no points. We were all
There
dumber
wasn't
for having
even
heard this.
one that was a little bit
Not
convincing.
even close.
Man.
And again, I wanted it. So, and I said, so now that we're there, and basically I just took apart everything he was saying, like just logically. And I said,
Do you remember one of the arguments?
they were so circumstantial.
Yeah, that's what I
Like
was thinking.
there was no
Yeah.
evidence. It was all like, but you know, there's big rivers and lakes we haven't explored. So clearly Sasquatch could be in those.
That's what I was
Like
thinking.
stuff like that. Like,
And we have people who say they've seen it, and I'm like, ugh, that doesn't hold much water either.
Right.
I was wondering that because a lot of the conspiracy theories that I can think of have pieces all over it where I go, interest. I don't think it leads to where you're saying it leads to, but that's a super interesting point. Some of them are even like, well, if that's true. I heard a flat earther talking about one where he's just talking all about the Treaty of Antarctica. And I'm like, I don't even know if that's a thing that exists.
exactly.
But he's talking about it.
It did
So
happen.
anyway,
The war with the walrus people brought about the Treaty of Antarctica, which was
remind me to jump back on this after Sasquatch because it was the greatest interview I've ever seen in my life. And I'm serious.
This is good. It's flat earthers. This idea of having to explain something to someone.
100%.
So, but this goes back to anyway. So I take it all apart gently. I'm not being mean to him, and then I go to this is why I had to explain to a coworker. You are talking about Jesus, who rose from the dead, and in the world's eyes is a mythical.
And technically
experience.
is a myth, right?
Right.
It is. It just happens to be true.
Yeah.
But it is a myth in the same way that people would talk about. So
Right.
you're 100% right. This is a big deal.
So I'm like, so when you're like Jesus and Sasquatch both are real.
Had a baby. What are you like? What are you?
I'm trying to ship their name. G-Squatch?
Yeah.
Do you know what is
And that's why he's so hard to find because he could like walk on water. He like runs across the lake, and you're like, oh my god,
Son of God, Son of Man, Son of Apes,
son of Squatch.
Son of Squatch, Sun Squatch. Oh, it's Sun Squatch. There we go. There was something there. It's Sun Squatch. So Sun Squatch and Jesus so basically it was this like I had this real conversation and he was hurt by it. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? He gave the nod like, because I did the like, can you see how the evidence for one
Yeah.
isn't the same for the other? Where I don't care that you believe it.
Right.
I don't care. But you talk about it like it is real, like you have the same evidence. And so I just said, you can't do that anymore.
So I'm super
then I
intrigued by
fired him.
this.
Later.
You did like
Later.
2 weeks later, right?
It wasn't
like,
2 weeks.
It
but
wasn't 2 weeks.
It wasn't 2 weeks, but I did fire him later.
I'm just intrigued.
It wasn't because of the Sasquatch.
Actually, it's because he was 40-something years old.
I mean,
And-
and that plays into it a little. Sasquatch has to play into it. Has to.
He's basically, like, it's like a ministry. He was done. He knew it, but he was grabbing a check.
Yeah.
I knew he was done. He knew he was done. And I literally said, like, dude, this isn't what you want to do. You want to go be a lead pastor somewhere where Sasquatch is real.
And he's
he
like,
wa-
but how else can I afford my Sasquatch excursions?
Well, here's how he
If
did
you're-
it. He moved north, where the squatching happens.
So happy. Wow. I'm so happy.
All right, tell us,
So this guy,
Sun Squatch.
making sure the cameras are still going. So this guy is on I guess he's one of the top guys of the Flat Earth Society. I love conspiracy theories. This guy is on a British talk show. They have conventions like for flat Earth people that all get together and they talk about, which is so funny to me because I'm like, the other side's not doing that. Yeah. We're not getting together and being like, let's talk about how the Earth's a globe.
Now, how do they decide where to gather together? Because aren't they terrified that they might just fall off the side
They're not
of the
actually
Earth?
terrified.
So they're not
this
at
is where
all.
His comment comes from.
This guy, so he's at this British talk show, and the news anchors were doing a great job. He starts talking. He has this tirade of why the Earth is flat, and there's a Antarctic treaty that it's the only treaty in the world that's never been broken. He's going off on this stuff. And the female anchor, she's the best because I thought I've been asking this question forever. She goes, hey, I just don't understand why. And he goes, well, what do you mean? She's like, why? If everybody knows the Earth is flat, because his point is that all the scientists know and they're all covering it up.
Oh, interesting.
And she's like, who cares?
Like, give me a motive.
Who's winning in the flat round Earth debate?
Yeah, who's profiting from it?
And I've always said, I've joked about it forever, and I've been like, oh, it's Big Globe.
Yeah.
It's the Big Globe corporations. Who cares?
At what point on an oceanic journey do you get nervous if you're a flat earther? You do start to being like, you start counting leagues,
Never,
how many
because according
leagues?
to him, it makes no sense either, because I'm like, if we don't have poles like that, his point, he's dead serious, that Antarctica is basically the rim around the entire thing. So I'm like, so it's not like an area, it would be the whole thing. And there is a giant, this is real, by the way, I'm repeating him. He said that there's this giant, like, kind of wall of ice.
And he referenced.
And then he goes, like in Game of Thrones, and we're like, dear God. He's literally referencing movies because he's like, that's all I got as
literally
evidence.
when he said that, when that first aired, Donald Trump tweeted, yes. Walls do work.
I told you.
I told you guys. Here's the two questions. You probably don't know this. What shape is the flat Earth? Is it a square? Is it a circle? Is it
It's a disc.
an amoeba? It's a disc.
It's a disc.
Oh, it is a
yeah.
disc.
Is
Yeah,
there
they
anybody
believe
on the
it's a disc.
bottom or the
because-
top? Or is it were you only on the top?
We're only on the top.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like zero concept of gravity. Like
It's a-
gravity's a lie.
It's a flat. No. Because we're sticking to the top.
We're sticking to. But why couldn't we stick to the bottom then?
Yeah.
I got nothing there. I don't know.
I love that
Yeah.
somewhere.
All the renderings I've seen, all the people, and here's
Interesting.
I enjoy it so much because my buddy and I share each other. They've been disproven so many times
By themselves. The best videos.
that I think it's
Those hum
It's my favorite
moments, like,
one. The documentary on Netflix where they're like letting them do
The
it.
laser.
This dude pays like, I don't know, $80,000 to have this gyroscope made because this guy at the time, this flat Earth dude, was like, if we have this gyroscope, we can prove that the Earth is flat because of whatever. I don't even know what it was.
Sure.
So this dude pays out of his pocket to make this stupid gyroscope. It was probably more. It was hundreds of thousands or whatever. And he makes it, and they're like, looking at it. And what's funny is that nobody knows what he's doing. He could have been like, see, told you.
Yeah.
But he's doing this, and no joke, he goes, this machine must be broken.
Amazing.
Because it's totally showing that the Earth is round.
Basically, every time they see the curvature is when all of a sudden they're like, huh.
Oh, the curvature ones? I don't understand. That's the one that to me gets disproven in the blink of an eye. Is the curvature of the Earth water? So the whole point of water is that it finds its own level.
Yeah.
So what they do is they have somebody stand in one spot and then across a lake. Like, it's that simple, like a pretty big lake. And it'll be at nighttime, and they shine a light straight. And they say if the Earth is flat, then the beam that starts here is going to be at the exact same level here. But the curvature of the Earth makes it to where you can't see the light.
Yeah.
And so they're doing it at night, and they're like, no, I still can't see it. Something must be wrong. And they go, put the light as high as you can. And then all of a sudden on the horizon, you just see the light peak above it because he's holding it way above the curve. And it pans to the guy's face, and he goes, huh. And then the whole documentary ends because you're like, you just got proven. It totally,
And
it-
all of them
water
have that-
has a curve to it.
All
Like,
of them have a huh moment.
All of
the
them.
Huhs are like, you're like, huh. Okay, let me bring it back to the podcast or to church. Real question.
Yeah.
Somebody, you find out, you've already hired them. They're on the team. You find out somebody on staff is a flat earther. What do you do?
Oh, have a big, long conversation. Like, it's
them
the same
give
as
all the
Sasquatch.
sermons.
What's funny is I would rather you be a Sasquatch hunter than a flat earther.
I would too.
As weird as that sounds.
I think if we're gonna grade
Yeah.
possibilities,
Yeah.
I'd be more likely to believe that there's Sasquatch than the Earth is flat.
Is it sad that that's out of all of them? Possibly lizard people might be worse,
Yeah.
but it's lizard people and flat earthers. Oh my gosh, we're gonna die. We're gonna get killed because of this. I just realized flat earthers and flat earthers are gonna hire lizard people to assassinate.
You know what
us.
is real though? Scientology, protect us. Scientology, protect us. Send your warriors to save us.
Warriors.
The flat earthers are coming. The great war of Scientology versus flat earth. I actually think flat earth's worse than lizard people. I think flat earth just because scientifically you could just prove it.
I would actually totally agree because at least with lizard people,
They're
you're
living in
saying,
the water. You can't see them.
well, no, and they disguise themselves as
Right,
us. They're
right.
so technologically advanced that we can't detect them yet. I'm like, that's a better argument than the thing that you can just go outside and prove right now at any moment. Any moment you can do this.
That's a fair point. At least lizard people you have to work to disprove, right?
Yeah, even Sasquatch, it's like we just haven't found him. Sure, Loch Ness monster,
Right.
the ocean's huge. You can't find we
Yeah.
can't find Nessie.
Yeah.
Well-
but flat Earth, you're just like,
And
dude,
in general,
what?
the flat earth people are conspiracy, like somebody's keeping information from me. The Sasquatch people are just like, I think he exists. They're not as like the government's hiding Sasquatch.
Squatchers are kind of fun.
They're kind of fun, like people who like want to believe aliens, like you know what I mean, like
Yeah, that's gotten legit in recent years.
well, there's so much video now from like the government's releasing where you're like,
yeah.
uh,
Let's run down that rabbit hole because
we
I
go.
think this is totally entertaining,
Okay.
and that's as far as it goes for me. There is so much video crap to where, and I've heard the dudes from something Corridor. They're you know, the YouTube guys who do special effects. They've looked at every one of those videos and they're like disproven, and they've gone through it. And it's weird because a couple of the ones that came straight out of government
the Navy one from 2 years ago is like, where
is
they're like,
mind-boggling.
it's literally footage the Navy caught, and they're literally like, nothing we know moves like that.
And the
that doesn't mean
pilot-
it's an alien,
Yeah.
but they're at least saying like
And
nothing
the
we know
pilot
moves
who
like that.
saw it is
I gotta
like,
see this.
like I watched it. It looks like a little a pill. It looks like a propane tank is what it looks like.
And it's moving at speeds and directions
Yeah.
not known. Doesn't mean literally this week, Korea tested something and it launched UFO sightings. But Korea said, no, that
for
was
sure,
us.
for sure.
So it's not impossible to see stuff that makes you think it is.
But did they say it was them to cover it up? You see what I'm saying here?
I love the aliens. I love the aliens come down and they're like America, dicks. Russia, dicks. Korea, you guys. We're gonna be friends with you guys.
I wonder who they would pick. It's got to be some Nordic country. They'd probably be like, "You guys seem to be doing okay. You guys seem to like each other more."
It'd be Switzerland, just like everybody else. Like we're
Right.
gonna pick somebody that's just right in the middle.
Right.
We're gonna pick them.
Okay, so with all the UFO stuff, because it has been on every show, everybody's talked about it, countless videos, eyewitness testimonies. There is one guy who, and I cannot remember his name, but Joe and I have started a screenplay a while ago because it was so interesting to me that this guy said he worked at Area 51 and he had every level of top secret, super top secret, double super, whatever, every level of clearance you can imagine. So he worked on everything. And he said, I worked on spacecrafts that came from space. And then he starts describing them. He starts describing their warp drive, their anti-gravity machine, like all that kind of stuff. Describing it in detail. He says they have an element called element 151 that actually powers these things. The ship itself creates its own gravitational force so that it can pull G-force that nothing no matter can actually do it, would tear it apart. But since it creates its own, it's amazing stuff. We wrote the screenplay because I wanted to take all of his information and put it into a sci-fi thing because I'm like, it'd be cool if it was tied into what this guy says is reality.
Sure, yeah.
So with all of that, it raises all these questions, which I immediately am like, okay, look, I'm not saying there are aliens. I'm not saying there's not aliens, but I think it's a fun exercise to go, do aliens change God in any way?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know you were going to go with that.
How does it, how would it affect what?
Let me just give you what I think is, I don't know if aliens exist or not. I don't care. But let me just give you a number that would blow your mind. How many planets do you think are in our galaxy, the Milky Way?
They're ridiculous amounts.
In just our not the universe, in our galaxy. What do you think? How many planets do you think there are?
No idea. It's probably billions or something ridiculous. I mean, certainly within the universe.
Estimating 100 billion in our galaxy, guys.
That's
not
what I hate.
Not in our universe.
Yeah.
In
It's
our
numbers
galaxy.
that aren't
how many
real.
galaxies are there's probably billions of galaxies.
And so
it's-
my whole thought is, so does it change God? So Mike, do you want to answer first? So I just want to say, the idea that something or someone else might live on 100 billion planets. Just start with is that a crazy thought that in another Earth or something that's in the perfect ratio from a star where life
And we
could
have,
exist?
I was going to say, we have found a lot of planets that live in the Goldilocks zone, they call it, which is close to the sun, all that kind of stuff. But let's just, and I don't want to pretend like there are aliens. I'm saying does the concept itself, God says, the Bible says that we were created in his own image. So if suddenly we're like, oh my gosh, there's 37 other planets that have life on them, and it's advanced life. So it's not this possible evolutionary process of cells, but it's this dude called me on my iPhone the other day, and he's an alien. What does that do for faith or the thought of God? Does God not exist if that's the case?
So you're saying aliens arrive on Earth. Let's just start with that. Does that change God? So they arrive, right? They were from another planet, so we actually physically see them, their ship, all that. So now we know we have, no doubt.
Undeniable evidence.
They're here. They show up.
They show up. They have all this technology. They say
lizards.
they are clearly, obviously, they're reptilian.
They're
of course, they're
we're why did you
reptilians.
why did you pick America? It was the most flat part of your flat Earth.
Yeah.
We're what?
They show up. That would be okay. I love this. Yeah. And Sasquatch is their dog. It's like a pet. They're yeah. Once a year we let our
he
dog
was
run.
lost. We were looking for him. Thank you guys.
We let our
Appreciate
dog
it.
run around in the yard. Oh, you guys are our backyard. Did you not know that? They just let Sasquatch run around every
And
year.
you know that your savior is Sunsquatch?
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
just a combination.
Guys, we told you this a long time ago. Did you not read the
Temples?
Bhagavad Gita that we wrote you? We wrote you a
It's
note.
all in those hieroglyphics. Those weren't humans writing that.
Damn it, we can't even read those yet. So they show up out of the blue, and they're like, "Hey,
They're here.
we want to. You guys are kind of fucking up your planet.
Right.
Okay, that's their whole thing. They're like, we showed up because your planet's getting destroyed. You guys are ruining it. We have all the technology to save you guys.
And all the Republicans go, boo, we don't believe you're aliens. Boo, you're not aliens. Aliens would never talk about climate change.
Wouldn't it be great if they showed up and they're like, hey, your atmosphere is warming up, and they're like, we don't believe in it.
That's
It's like
it.
they're like, no, dude, we just got here
Look at this
from another
ship.
universe.
I'm made of different material. My skin is different than anything on your planet.
Get
Nope,
outta here.
Nope, no
Get
climate
out.
change.
So
I love it.
they're like, okay, we're here to help. We have all this technology. And since they're so advanced, we're like, where did you guys come from? Where does life come from? And they're like, oh, we figured it out. We traced it all back to this one point. And we're like, do you guys have a deity? And they're like, no, of course not. That's stupid. Why would we? And they're so advanced. They're mind-boggling. And they think the concept of God is as a deity is a stupid thing.
I've thought through this so much on my own.
What do we do? Oh, I know.
I've
It's totally
spent
fun.
too much
great.
time
That's
thinking through this
Yeah.
concept.
So what do you
Mike,
do?
let's start with Mike.
You
Mike,
hear
what do
all that. You're sitting at home. You've got your kids
Man.
around, and you're like, oh, shoot.
Praise Glip Glop. That's what he said. Mike falls on his knees. Praise Glip Glop.
I mean, I think
All hail Bazorp.
as much as this is ridiculous, I do love this, right? I love going down these rabbit holes.
So fun.
right?
And
I
why
mean,
is it so ridiculous all of a sudden,
Yeah,
Mike?
100 billion
Jeez.
planets, Mike. 100 billion planets.
You know, I have no problem with that idea. There's a old picture, and it's not old, I guess, probably 5-10 years ago, where they took a picture of the sky, they stitched it together. I mean, it's gigabytes and gigabytes of, space. And then they had to take a computer to
Count it
then count all the
Oh,
stars.
yeah.
And it was like 88 million stars.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, this was just one, like we just basically took a
And
picture.
one
It
angle,
wasn't
one
like
angle,
we
it wasn't panned.
Yeah, it wasn't like we panned or did
Yeah.
anything else. And so
And
you're
each
thinking,
star
okay,
is our sun.
Each star
Like,
has
I
its
don't-
own solar system.
I actually
And
don't
so-
like this, by the way. It gives me a minor existential crisis, not because of God at all. It's too big of information.
Absolutely.
It's too much, and I'm
Absolutely.
like, what the hell is
The
happening?
same
Absolutely.
concept. If you've ever swam over any kind of a chasm in the ocean, that moment of being like, like, you know what I mean? Like, you see everything, and all of a sudden you realize there's like a bottomless chasm beneath you when you're
Yeah.
scuba diving.
Yeah.
It has that same feeling where you're like, whoa,
You know you're
whoa,
floating. You know
whoa.
you can't fall, but it's just
It's
something
just
about the vastness.
so creepy.
And is it weird that there are people in this world that say chasm? Is that weird to you? Because it's weird to me. People actually say chasm.
I know who says that. Actually, I have a friend, but it's his YouTube channel. Chaz.
And you didn't shoot him.
You've just been
You let him
chasmed.
live.
You know what? I'd be way into that. I'd be way into that. Rather
You've just
than,
been chasmed. Chaz, you did it again. You coot.
Oh, Chaz. Okay, so you saw the picture.
Yeah, and so, just like he's saying, right? It's like, well, there's that many stars out there. That's only not even a fraction of
our
the
galaxy,
sky.
and that's a guess, right?
Yeah, part of our galaxy, right? We're not even talking about the different spirals on our galaxy or all the different galaxies that are out there. So the idea that we are the only thing in existence of some sort of, sentient being, whatever you want to call us, is either means we're nothing and there's billions of other life forms out there that we don't know anything about, or we really are that unique and that makes us even all that more special, which, I'm not sure. Yeah.
It does
It's
sound
like,
like
the America in the middle of the
I know, right?
map,
Yeah.
right?
it does sound very much like humans, though, just to be like that arrogant and prideful.
Oh, for
it
sure.
does. Where
It
we're like,
does.
no,
Absolutely
we
does.
got
But
this.
at the
Like,
same
we-
point in
we're doing
time,
it.
if you're a Christian, I like when I like this juxtaposition of being like arrogant and prideful. But then God's like, I killed my son for you. So he's kind of telling us to think highly of yourself in one level. Do you know what I mean? He's like,
Sure.
I'm gonna kill God for you. And you're like, well then, like I'm not that much of a dick to
But
think
would
that
you
I'm special.
think it would lessen our uniqueness or how much we matter to God if we had other brothers and sisters from other worlds?
Well, I think it goes
Well,
back.
clearly you hate one of your sons then, and you like the other one better.
pretty
if you're
obvious,
asking
yeah.
that question.
and I think it also goes back to the idea of, I think, so aliens show up, they're like, we don't believe there is a God or anything along those lines. That doesn't hinder me at all
And then
because
do we have
I
to
would
save
still,
those aliens. Is that what we have to do? Is that what you're saying?
You
This
know,
is the Great Commission.
This is it. So go
out to the ends of the
What's
universe,
your
not the
word
world.
for?
That's right.
What's your word for God? We don't have one. Right? We're going with Bazorka Zork. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So, but I think I'd be more challenged if they could recreate the galaxy. Because
Sure.
it always goes back to me is like, where'd everything come from? I don't care if you're like, I don't believe in God. I'm like, cool. Where did this all come from? Like,
Okay.
I'd be
Yeah.
curious to hear that perspective.
I love it, though. So they have the technology to create matter.
And what created the technology that created that matter?
They did.
But then what created them?
They say they don't know. They
Right.
say their race. No, hang
Oh, yeah,
on.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Their race. I love it.
Keep going,
This is
Bazorka
where we're
Zork.
getting heated now.
Their race has been around for millennia. They don't even know how to track it anymore
So
because
they don't have a beginning and an end.
they don't.
So these are eternal beings.
Yes.
So now we're going
To
with
their knowledge, let's say. So I'm not
so
saying
like if I shoot them right now, they're not going to die.
Nope.
Nothing happens to them. So they are just around eternally.
this is fun. So there's
So this is where you go into the fourth dimension and fifth dimension creatures, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with this concept, but fourth dimension, right, is time.
Yep.
And so, like with Interstellar, the movie, what they're kind of playing on is like, well, if you had a higher dimension
Yeah,
being,
right.
they could see time in
Exactly.
the same way we see this table.
Sure.
And so, yeah, you
That's
can play
if
that
you've ever
too.
read the book Flatland, they do a great job of talking about a world in 2 dimensions and
It's a flat Earth too.
It is.
Yeah.
And how unreal the 3rd dimension being. Like if we were to enter into a 2-dimensional world, we would be gods to them.
Yeah.
So a 4th dimensional being would be, or a 5th, whatever.
5th, yeah, or beyond.
So,
I think if some being showed up,
uh-huh.
then they're eternal, right? Like they were like have their,
Okay.
like whatever it is, whether they're using time or
Yeah,
space or I personally, and this is probably just the skeptic in me, I would probably go back to Jesus rose from the dead. I know that's a really weird thought, but I'd go back to and be like, that doesn't change that, and I would be, I'd be like to the aliens, I'm like, hey guys, glad you're here. I think God loves you, even though you don't believe in him. If you keep saying that Jesus isn't God, I'm pretty sure he's going to show up and put a sandal up your ass, a full sandal in your ass right now. Like, I feel like that's going to happen at some point. Like, the book of Revelation begins and Jesus just starts beating the shit out of aliens. Like, right
So
away.
you don't think you'd have pause even for a moment?
I think because I went through a massive existential crisis where I had to go through all these scenarios in my mind, I think what he's presenting new information doesn't change the previous information of the resurrection. So the new information doesn't change what's already happened.
Interesting. What about you, Mike? Would you have pause?
I would at least consider everything, right? I feel like I have to have pause, kind of like you said earlier with Sasquatch and Flat Earth. Like, I want to know, and I
Well,
want
you're
to
already
hear these
convinced
things.
now of those two.
Yeah.
It didn't take much of a podcast to convince you.
exactly.
You're already all
Those we
in.
believe are true. Yeah.
Mike's all in.
Yeah.
I didn't even hear the argument, and I'm in.
I wasn't even there. Sure. Yeah. He's in there.
So it would give me enough pause. Like, I want to consider it, and right. I mean, I'm assuming they're like you're going to say is something along the lines of like, well, no, we created you, so we're your God. We just called us God. You called us angels. You called us whatever. But we're just really, normal beings like you guys, except maybe we don't die.
It's actually
or some of those kind of
Jesus
things.
right here. This glob of energy. We call him Jesus.
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah.
been saying his name wrong the entire time.
Yeah.
Jesus is maybe what it should.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess it would redefine. I think the part that would be tough for me is like, well, then what do you do with the personal experiences that you had or have had that you would call divine, miraculous, whatever they are, right? Like, that wouldn't necessarily erase that. But I think it would be interesting to say, like, okay, well, if this is accurate, how does this then fit into the framework in the life that I've already experienced? And so
Yeah.
I don't think it could take away.
I think you have to
necessarily or
hear everything they
remove.
say. I
Yeah,
think you have to hear
absolutely.
everything. I think you have to. I mean, you have to really sit down and listen and be open to it.
Yeah.
And I really would be like, what do you do with Jesus? Like that'd be
Mm-hmm.
my question. Then is like, what do you do with that?
Yeah, and I would ask. That would be, I think, one of my big things to where I'm
And
like,
they're like, well, why don't you just ask him? He's right here.
yeah. But they're like, we've clearly been like watching you guys for a long time, and we're like, yeah, the Jesus dude, you guys have been created with so much potential that you're not tapping into. Jesus just tapped into it. So he could totally manipulate matter the way that we do because he figured out how to use it. And if you guys figure that out, you could do the same thing.
Yeah. Or what if they're like, hey, you know what? We just thought it'd be really funny. We just gave him the medicine.
It was
we
a-
know he was going to be
it was
okay.
a total prank.
You guys are all. We just thought it'd be funny.
Yeah.
It was part of our TV show.
Yeah,
It was a new hit series. We're all watching you.
They
guys.
prank different planets that go around. They just prank planets.
So
The Ashton Kutcher of their world.
That's right.
So they would be like, they'd be like, well, I'm going to show you how you can be just like Jesus, and they're going to unlock all that potential in
Yeah.
there, and now all of a sudden you have a planet of Jesuses being like that. That starts happening. You have to just start to say like, all right, I need to really think through this. But I would be so skeptical.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I don't know. I think I'd almost be along the lines of, so this is really weird logic, but I'd be like, I'd rather, if believing what you're saying benefits me not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, am I going to agree with you, right? So now I agree with you. Big deal. I'd rather not agree with you and make sure I'm going to my grave believing in Jesus. Sure. You know what I mean? Like,
Interesting.
I would rather, if it's no benefit to me.
You'd
like, I
rather
don't-
believe a lie.
Well, I'm not saying they can prove that it's a lie.
So it's kind of like a form of Pascal's.
Because here's the thing: is at some point in our future, some of the stuff Jesus did, I think science will probably be able to do some of that stuff. And
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I think there would be some things like somebody might be able to bring somebody back from the dead or something like that.
Okay, that's
So-
that's what Narcan does right now.
Right.
So that's not
So
far
if somebody,
off.
if
Narcan's
if all of a
pretty
sudden in our
amazing.
future they could bring somebody back from the dead, I wouldn't doubt my belief in Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Like from that, I wouldn't say that wasn't real.
Sure, I'm okay with that. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So I'm saying,
I think that's
like,
valid.
so if they
yeah.
bring some new tech that mirrors what Jesus did, doesn't all of a sudden make Jesus not God.
in the same way that the magicians in Egypt, basically mimicked what Moses was doing with God's power. So kind of that same thing where it's like you're just doing the same. Just because you're doing the same, I was going to call them tricks. I don't want to say what Jesus did was tricks.
He did do tricks.
He's like So like you mimic those. So it's not.
Whenever Jesus did a miracle, did he do like the magician?
He was
wave?
so
Did
flamboyant.
He was like bang.
I
He
think
was
it's
so
I
flamboyant.
just
Awesome.
think it's along the lines of I would just need so much evidence. It's not that there can't be enough evidence. It would just have to be like, I don't even know. Like it'd have to be this like monumental. They bring me back in time. Do you know what I mean to that moment? Because like time is a concept. And
Ooh, that would
they
be
bring me
fun.
back to when Jesus is there, and then
Yeah.
Jesus is all like, "Yeah, these are my guys." You know what I mean? Like I didn't mean any of this stuff.
He's the Big Lebowski. That's who. Hey, everybody! These are my buddies. You guys want to go bowling?
That's
What's
right.
just happening?
It was really the Pharisees were pissed at what a dick he was and what a
all.
doofus.
The
You guys
Pharisees-
think he's awesome. He's like, guys, what's up? I'm
The
Jesus."
Pharisees were these awesome people
They're
who were
just
like,
like,
"This guy's
a
the dick."
this guy's
No,
a
it's
dipshit.
him.
You believe this guy?
Yeah.
It's like, what's up, guys? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like you're making those claims that shaped our planet, not me. Shaped our planet. I need a lot.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued because I hear stuff probably on a weekly basis. Like, I mean, I just spend a ton of time on YouTube and Reddit, and there's mostly non-Christians on both those platforms. And I hear things, I would say probably once a week that I'm like, ooh, that's a good argument. And I stop and think through it, and I'm like, okay, it was a bad argument, and here's why.
Right.
But there are things where I go, okay, the concept of how complicated, and this goes both ways. This is what intrigues me. How complicated our brains are, just our brains.
Sure.
To have thought, to have consciousness.
Sure.
And the amount of firings of neurons, which are simply electrical impulses. And what those electrical impulses cause as far as we hear voices, like the having thought in and of itself, to be able to think to myself in my own head.
Right.
Like sometimes people think they're schizophrenic just because they're having their own small thoughts.
Right.
All these firings of neurons, one little misfiring causes like hallucinations and crazy stuff that actually sound like spiritual, but they're not. It's just a misfiring of the brain.
Right.
And with that, and I'm not saying I believe this. I'm a huge follower of Christ. It's so interesting to me
Like
because
he's
I'm
got
like,
the T-shirts and the bumper stickers.
I got the bobblehead too.
And that's what a
all.
devil worshiper would say, right?
That's
Like,
right. That's
yeah.
right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Actually, that's what lizard people would say when they're feeling they're about to be caught. No, I believe in Jesus.
Hey guys, we're fine.
Whoa.
And then they go,
Resort.
and they just disappear. Dear God, what was that? I think the idea that we are just this mess of neurons that fire and then can misfire, and then we have, again, hallucinations, hear things. And I go, oh man, does my belief, is it just boiled down to firings in my neurons and electrical impulses? And I'm not, again, I've walked through that.
I think it's worth asking.
But it was such a fun thought experiment for me to then go, and it does, when sometimes people have experiences. I am so, being a really strong Christian who believes strongly in the power of the Holy Spirit to be able to do anything, because again, I believe, like these aliens, as funny as it is, that God created the whole universe.
Yeah.
So
That's-
for
that's
Jesus
the
to be
easy
able
part.
to grow an arm back, like in Scripture, and people are like, that's impossible. I'm like, he knit matter together. It'd be so funny for him as someone, like I work with my hands a lot. I'm a woodworker. I'm a blacksmith. I can create things. That's my medium. if matter and cells and atoms are God's medium, he's like, oh, and the arm growing back's easy. Jesus even says, what's easier to make this guy walk
It's funny.
or to forgive his sins?
I thought the same thing. And it's funny is, every time they discover another people group somewhere on the planet that missionaries get there for the first time, they never met anybody outside their people group.
Yeah.
Every one of them are theists. I wonder if the universe is like that. I wonder if the guys that show up like, we don't believe there's a God. And I'd be like, but do other people on your planet believe there's like, well, yeah, I mean, these other guys do. We don't. We're the scientists. But there are other people think there's a God.
Let's flip this a little bit. Because, again, I'm only referencing this because it plays into it. But the screenplay we were writing is that God actually showed up to different planets. God created a bunch of different planets that have life. And each of those planets developed life differently. So there's this separate planet that basically never has the fall.
Yeah.
They never have sin in them.
It's a really fun script.
So
we wrote it.
It's
It's really good.
And so they advance technologically because, like the Tower of Babel, how sounds like God turns to somebody, it might have been Jesus or angels, and says we have to confuse their language or else they'll be able to achieve anything. Since they didn't have sin, they basically they advanced like crazy. So they are this
for
amazing
trillion years, but
civilization.
eventually wear out their
planet.
Their planet just wears out.
Yeah,
Like,
but
it
they're
just-
all doing awesome.
Yeah.
Let's say the aliens like that came to Earth, and they show up and we're like, oh my gosh, this technology, this is amazing. Like, what about God? And they're like, oh, absolutely, we believe in Yahweh, and they like even have the same names. What would that do to the planet?
What if they arrive at the same time? They start
God and
fighting.
the aliens?
Oh, these dicks. We've been showing up at the same planets. They're telling everybody there's no God. Oh, those hippies. They're telling everybody there's a God.
That's totally what it is. And then they have a fight, but they just stare at each other. And it's all like brain. It's like, that's the whole
We've
fight.
been around forever, but we also know that it's because of God. Like, you know what I mean? Like this huge
It'd be so great.
It would be, I just think it'd be interesting. I mean, obviously all this stuff is fascinating stuff. But I think it'd be worth, I think it's just that in general, I like hearing everybody out. Whatever it is, I'm listening. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to hear it. Like, I want to hear it. I want to talk about it. I want to think about it.
Yeah. And I wonder if I'm so quick to listen to literally anyone at any point, even when it's a very contradictory opinion than mine. So if I hear, and this is true, I've done this multiple times with atheists, with Muslims, where I'm like so quick to, if you can say the right, and I don't know what the right thing is, but if you can prove this, I will stop believing in God. I'm so open to that I'm like, maybe I'm too open to that because I really am. I want to change my mind. Like, I want to think what you think is true.
I don't want to believe a lie.
I really don't.
What about this concept? Is it possible, just asking, if Satan could dream up an alien,
Ooh, I like this.
like an alien like that answers all those questions?
Yeah.
Like,
Isn't that kind of what the Antichrist does?
he's kind of that. Well,
Like,
he does
to
he
a
is.
degree.
He's to a degree. He's basically like, no, that wasn't the God. This is God.
He solves
all
of the
questions.
world problems.
Yeah, all the world is this. And
He
so,
like literally solves world hunger. He solves all that kind of stuff. And it's so interesting because it's like, that's kind of what it is, right? What if it's a lizard person?
Right.
He gets everybody if it's a lizardy Sasquatch. If it's a hairy lizard.
I just love that I want the Antichrist to be something like, the Jim Jones cult people. Be like, they were right. He shows up and he like affirms one of the weird cults. He's like, nope, they were
That would
actually
be
right.
awesome.
Yeah.
They're like, how those aliens get here? And they're, how'd you get here? They're like, the back of Haley's Comet. We told
Heaven's
that
Gate.
group a long time ago.
Heaven's Gate is literally the gate we came through.
I literally told them
Entered
it's Heaven's
this
Gate.
gate.
And they're on the ship with us. They've been with us the whole time. They just drank some Kool-Aid. It was super easy.
It is this weird, you're a crazy backwoods loon who's so close-minded and anti-science to think that the aliens are from the devil. And then I'm like, but also they could be. Do you know what I mean? So I want to let you know I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just denying what's in front of me. But let's just go with this. He's real. If the devil was real and he thought he could dream up a creature that would make us all not believe in God.
Or did we just give him the idea?
just now.
Yeah,
He's not listening to this podcast.
That's a good point. That's more
He's
accurate.
like, it's way too crude
Yeah.
for me. He's like,
He's offended all the time by this podcast. He's like, oh, gross.
so if you could be convinced that it was all a lie, what you believe, would you then just go do every sin you could possibly think of?
No.
No?
I wouldn't, actually.
Is it because there's still earthly ramifications?
I think because I grew up as a non-believer, and it wasn't that great.
So you've
I'm
already
just gonna
done
be
you've
super
already
honest
done
with-
all the sins.
Yeah,
you know?
I think all the sins I wanted to
Your
do,
bucket
I
list
did.
of sins you've already
And
checked
I'm like,
off.
and it wasn't great. Like, I'm just being super honest.
Yeah.
It was I have the benefit of being able to compare one to the other. It wasn't great.
I
did
do
not-
wonder
did not
if
love it.
if some of that is because I've said that for a long time, where I'm like, that question. I used to think like, absolutely, I'd go crazy, I'd do all this stuff, and then I went, oh, that's thinking that that's better. Like, if
Right.
my thought is that that's better to begin with, then fine. But then what I'm doing is this massive sacrifice, and I'm like, no, because I actually believe that living life as a Christian means that you're living into the abundant life, which
I was
means
gonna
that
tee
life
you up.
is, yeah.
I know, because I'm like, that's what it boils down to.
Which means
maybe
that
you're doing
life
this wrong.
is so much better.
If you're craving to sin, you're probably doing this
You're
wrong.
doing this wrong.
You're probably doing this wrong. Yeah. Because not because I think you're morally bad, because I'm thinking you're missing out.
Sure.
You are and that they do that. The church will saddle you with your salvation.
Yes.
They tell you that it's all free and good.
Yeah.
But add these other 19 things.
And nobody words it better than Paul when he's talking to Ephesus.
Yep.
Where he says, who has bewitched you? He's like, you began by faith and now you think you're going to earn it? He's like, who's bewitched you? Who's fooled you into thinking that now you've got to do? He's like, no, this is the abundant life. This is the better version. And then what's funny is at that same time I have this thought where it's like, but do the bad things seem bad? Because even when I wasn't a Christian, I still felt guilt. And I had it was weird.
I mean, I literally felt like no one's telling me it's wrong, and I felt bad. That's a
Is
weird
that
thought.
Is that because we were raised in a Judeo-Christian
I was raised by a
morality?
mob family.
Yeah,
No,
but you were
and I still feel-
Catholic. There was a Catholic
Well, we didn't.
bend.
I mean, Christmas and Easter.
Right, but that's what I'm
maybe.
saying. There and culturally, we are a Judeo-Christian society. I don't care if you're a massive atheist. You still are kind of in this. Our laws are all based on that kind of stuff. So I do
So,
wonder.
like, do the cannibals feel bad for eating people?
Yeah.
Like, do they have a check in their spirit when they're chewing on a foot?
They're just upset about it.
I know we said this is fine. We have cannibal in our name. I mean, like, it's what we
It's
know.
who we are.
It's what we do.
I don't want to do this, but it tastes so good. Yeah, so I've always thought like that's so interesting. I wonder if some of what we experience is cultural guilt, especially when I think knowing God, if we knew God in a pure form, I don't think we would experience the guilt.
Okay, so here's what I've come to understand from just studying people like you have, like, for years, and whether that's tribes to first world countries. There's something in humans that create their own right and wrong.
Yeah.
No matter what it is.
Yeah.
No matter what, honor amongst thieves, stuff like that. So it doesn't. So that's the real heart of it. Is what's putting that in you that you need to determine there is a right and a wrong. Because I think that's really the heart of where it gets at to. I think it's not about we've been raised and do this or not do that. It's more that we've been something in our DNA or our design is there is right and wrong. Whoever determines it.
And Scripture says like God's kind of put Himself in the heart of every man. I think it's weird that like the world, the rocks will cry out. Like there's something innately that we know. It's intriguing that we come to different standards, but then I think like, yeah, it's because God's plan wasn't to set standards for us. It wasn't.
No.
It was to just be with us.
Yeah.
And it was to reveal Himself through His Son, who then became the Savior of the world. And it's like that being what it's all about, the cultural norms that we put on it, and we call them Judeo-Christian. And sometimes I'm like, no, that was still you making that up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think God wants you to murder people. Right. I don't. But at the same time, I think God's perspective on life is just different than ours. And so
Yeah.
I think the whole thing's it's super interesting.
It's
to me.
more, and I think it follows the Bible's line of the familial theology, which is it's more fatherly, and where you don't need your kids all to be uniform, right? They don't have to all be the exact same thing, do the exact same stuff.
But we are wearing a uniform.
We are wearing.
like
It's
a
funny. It's
skin
funny you
meat
say
bag.
that. It's funny you said that because I kept thinking of Jesus showing up wearing a backpack, a white shirt, tan pants on a bicycle, and a bike helmet, and being like, "What's up, everybody?" And he was like, "No, man, no, you're Mormon, bro. You're not Jesus.
You gotta pick something else to wear, bud.
He just rides up on a bike. He's like, "What's up, guys?
That's great.
Can I tell you about?"
Can I tell you about me?
Can I tell you about this unique business opportunity I have for you?
Can I? You don't believe me? Let me bring my angel Moroni. I was like, "What?"
Christianity kind of does seem like the original multi-level marketing scam, though.
Yeah.
It really does. Where it's like if you get
This is
somebody
not a
in
bad
heaven,
point.
you
Yeah.
get a crown, you get a gem in your crown, a jewel. But if they lead 10 people, you get more gems. So it's like you keep it's MLM. It's
Yeah.
totally MLM.
like this.
There's
I
a
like this.
there's a
Spiritual MLM.
there's a
I mean, that
show
is
that was
the
on
mandate of the New Testament.
Telling
Is
you.
go out into the whole world. And that's
There was a
interesting.
show on Prime, but it started on Sci-Fi, and I can't remember the name of it. It's a space show, and the religious dicks of the show are Mormons. I'm like, how burnt was this guy by Mormonism that he's
That's
built a whole
hilarious.
show that the religious people that nobody likes on the show are Mormons? I'm like,
That's amazing.
Interesting.
I just saw. I wanted to find the guy's name, but I think if I click off of the app, it turns off the camera.
Yeah, so don't do it. Don't do it.
I did it I did it in the beginning, and I saw that the light was red, so I was like, "Oh crap!" So I clicked it back on.
Yeah, the light was just red a second ago.
And it was because I swept up to check on the guy's name and went, "Oh shoot, it went red." So I'm gonna just not do that and say you look up this guy's name. There's a new comedy special on Netflix.
Just saw it. It just scrolled
Redhead
across.
guy?
Yeah. Just
Did you
scrolled
watch it yet or
no?
no?
It just scrolled across it was the opening.
He starts his routine, and I was kind of like, I can't tell. Like, I really enjoy comedy, so I'll listen to anybody.
You are a stand-up comedy freak.
And I was like, interesting. And then he got into it. Dude, it is phenomenally good. Like, you know how Netflix is kind of giving anyone who can breathe a
everybody
special
gets a
comedy
show. It's an
special.
everybody
I'm still
gets a
waiting
show.
for mine.
Yeah, right? I thought that at first. I've seen this guy before, and I've even said, like, this dude's totally funny. But he's not a big name. Dude, it's brilliant. Wow. It is one of the he basically craps on Republicans and Democrats, and he's like, Biden is an idiot, and he's like, and I know a bunch of you guys cheering think that though the last guy was a moron too. Like he just
it's good.
hammers everybody. It's
good.
Even-handed.
At one point, he talks about how Jesus was so obviously gay, and he went through the different things
Amazing.
that were so. And obviously Jesus wasn't gay. He's not saying Jesus was gay, but he went with everything from he's hanging out with 12 dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, and think about it, like
John's
the
laying
first
his head on his chest.
100%.
Yeah.
He's like, the first miracle in the Bible, he's like, oh, I can change this water into anything I want. And then all the frat boys were like, oh, make it beer. And he's like, oh, what about a nice Pinot? Like, it's just so freaking good. And he does like 4 or 5 of those where I was like, man, that's a great take on it.
You
Like,
are
it's
on
so
Sacrilicious.
good.
By the way, the best comedians do stuff that I think is brilliant. Louis C.K. has a bit on abortion. He has a bit on
it's the
God.
best.
He has
Yeah.
a couple bits on God.
Somebody
and he's an
needs
atheist,
to check
and he's-
God's trunk.
Right. He's an atheist, and he believes in pro-life, but he does such a good job of dismantling both sides. Like, where you're just like, and who was it just?
I
recently?
actually think
the
he's
guy,
pro-choice, just to clear that
What
up.
did I say, pro-life?
Yeah,
I
you
meant
said
pro-choice.
yeah.
I meant pro-choice. What's the other guy you went and saw at Oakland Cussing?
Oh, Bill Burr.
Bill Burr has a couple of. I saw like on. I think it was. I'm not even
Genius.
joking. It was something like. I'm not saying it was on like Christianity Today, but it was something like that where they were playing Bill Burr's bit
Amazing.
on that
incredible.
because it was so. And Dave
this is
Chappelle,
great.
the well balanced, and it's comedy, and they're just but it's like.
Yeah.
It really does do this. Like I'm like, well, they're
Well, and how do you not have, I don't care how strongly you have a stance. It's the reason that we have this podcast. We're 3 insanely strong Christians. Like, Joe and I are lead pastors. Mike has been attending church for so long, like a devout Christian. And if you can't laugh about this stuff,
Yeah, come on.
something's wrong with
and
you,
like
man.
and like I'm uber conservative.
Or
I'm
see
pro-life.
the other side.
I'm like pro-life all day long, pro-life, and I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was
Absolutely.
a genius perspective.
Yeah, I'm pro-life, but man, I can see a pro-choice perspective.
I'm not mad
I
at-
understand it.
Right. I had to first come to this place of what are you saying? Why are you saying it? And then come to a place of like, okay, I totally get it. And then I'm just choosing a different way. But it's not like
Yeah.
I don't get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like I want to get to this place where I'm like, no, I want to like present
You know what's
it.
interesting about I think abortion is the wrong topic. However, what's
Literally in
interesting-
radio.
I know.
It's the one. It's the two things.
Abortion and what was LGBTQ?
No, Hitler.
Oh my gosh,
It's kind of like
hilarious.
it's kind of like you don't talk about Nazis.
Maybe it's because he aborted a lot of kids.
Yeah, that's right. And adults.
Here's what I love about podcasts and YouTube is that you can.
Yeah.
And it's like, and the only point I want to make about it that I think is so interesting is that my pro-life stance is not as much based on my faith as I used to think it was.
Right.
I thought it was entirely based on my faith and that Christians have to be pro-life. And then when I went through all the information, I went, oh, this isn't as much about God as I thought.
Yeah.
It really was about like science. And I went, oh, that. But again, it's just how I feel and how I believe. And then I go, oh, you think differently? Also, let's talk about it. And we get to have differing opinions. And you can be a Christian and be pro-choice.
And you can be a Christian and laugh about stuff.
Right.
That's the weirdest.
Get
we
a
were just saying
freaking
this.
sense of humor. What
Why
is the deal?
are everybody who's like on the like whatever perspectives, whether religiously or politically on the right, you are a bunch of humorless dicks. What if you're so? Here's my thought: is if you're so convinced something is true, you should be the first one to laugh.
Yeah.
When someone makes jokes, you should be like, "Oh, I'm." If somebody's walking around
If you're
making
that
gravity
secure in
jokes,
what you believe.
But no,
Yeah.
this was our thing. That's why flat Earth is funny. Is because we're like, oh no, it's been really proven, and
Right.
you're running around, and because you got on an airplane, and you're like, no, it looked flat to me. I'm like, oh, well, that's just humorous.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I believe in a globe so much
Yeah.
that it's humorous that you think
Yeah.
it's flat.
Because-
It's the same thing.
it goes back to our like alien conversation. They show up, they have like super compelling proof, and I'm just like,
You guys are
you
stupid.
guys are stupid. Everybody's like, this guy's a loser.
Yeah, this guy.
But I'm all like, I can laugh about this. You guys are crazy. They turn me into a pile of shit.
Yeah. Just immediately, you're like, at least this pile of shit's going to heaven. Brr.
Slowly going down. Like, I believe in you, Jesus.
That's a good time. This all got started with explaining something to a coworker. The stupidest thing you've ever had to explain
Which
to a
is
coworker.
really good because this is where these conversations do like we hire people. All of us are in a position where we have employees and hire people.
Yeah.
These are real conversations you have to have.
Absolutely.
And I think it goes back to it really goes down to this idea of hiring people with similar values, not because you want to exclude other people. It's just going to be a better working environment.
Yeah.
That's
So this is
simple.
interesting. So hiring someone in a church who has a weird conspiracy theory like Sasquatch
How long
or
has this
flat
podcast
Earth.
been on, by the way?
About
I'm
an hour.
Long.
Okay.
An hour?
Yeah, hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's super, like, it's interesting. We'd have to really talk through that. What about, like, in your business, you don't call it consulting anymore.
Advising.
You call it advising.
Advising,
I've always said
consulting.
consulting.
I know. We kind of say that too, just
Yeah.
because that's what people know.
Okay. So
Advising can sometimes have a
Solomon
weird, like-
advising is
which
what
is
it's
which is
what it's called.
which is better for trying to find a website.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
so
Solomon, not consulting.
So Solomon advising, you consult and advise a bunch of different
And
businesses, individuals.
Solomon suggesting was taken.
Solomon suggest, yeah.
Pay me to suggest.
Solomon's wisdom was also taken.
You're interviewing somebody, somehow in the conversation, one of these fringe or mainstream conspiracy theories comes up. Flat Earth, Sasquatch, lizard people, whatever. Does it change? You're not a church at all. You're technically a secular organization. You're a for-profit business. You're not a 501c3. Do you kind of go, oh, geez, I know.
Before you answer, let me slam your company one more time. We're Solomon advising. I mean, you could take our advice. I mean, it has the name Solomon in it. They might as well. I'm going to open up Jesus advising. I mean, like you could go against Jesus or against
I don't
Solomon.
mind that.
And surprisingly, we still have a lot of clients that don't take our
That's right,
advice, which
for
is
sure.
pretty amazing.
It's weird. That is one. That's kind of off the table. So you can use any biblical name you want. So even Solomon something, you could use any. You can't do like Jesus' car lot. You can't do Jesus. Like that would be
Maybe
weird.
that's just in America. Maybe you could do this in Mexico though.
100% you could do it in Mexico.
100%.
For sure. There is actually a Jesus Landscaping in town. I've seen his trucks and I'm always like, I want Jesus mowing my lawn. That's amazing. Every time I see him, I'm like, I love this guy.
My scenario is that they're like, okay, we recommend you cut the baby in half. And they're like, no. And we're like, the name.
The name.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so back to you. Do you hire these people?
I think for me, as long as they could do their job, that's great. I think it would really depend on how evangelical are you about Sasquatch or whatever
Love
it
it.
is,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're going to every client and it's first thing you're saying is, "Hi, my name is Johnny, and let me tell you about this flat Earth," then that might become a problem. But I'm like,
Would that be a problem if they were a Christian doing that? Just ask. I want to know.
not,
If they're trying to evangelize all the clients, is that a problem?
Oh, you mean like to become Christians?
Yeah, like on
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it would be in our personal.
But he got saved, Mike.
I know.
We lost the client, but he got saved.
But he got saved. You know what? Then okay.
Yeah, that cost
was
us a
payment
lot
enough.
of money.
That was our $100 million client.
Yeah.
But he got saved, Mike.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, but did he? I'd be like, did he really? Like, I need some serious proof that dude got saved if you're going to lose me $100 million.
Right, yeah.
He decided to give it all away. He doesn't need me anymore.
He just ruined his business.
He just gave it all away.
He had a multi-million-dollar company, and he gave it all away because of you.
This is Mike going to Cheryl like, good job. Good job, Cheryl.
So proud of you.
You did it.
Could you give me like 10 minutes by myself just to think
You
this
did
through?
it, Cheryl.
Oh, God.
The kingdom is better.
Oh, I can't wait to see the size of the gem in my crown. Oh, God.
Wait, did he give all of his money away to Ezekiel advising? Damn it.
Oh, he gave it to the zoo?
Pharisee
Oh, he
advising.
gave it to the zoo.
Oh, that's the worst. That's the worst. We did actually have a client that did not hire somebody because they were too Christian. And that was just within the last few weeks. And
You know what? I'm not, as a
too-
devout Christian, I'm not mad at that.
Define it.
Yeah.
they were just a
What's too
very
Christian? I mean, I know what I think that is.
For
I just
sure.
want to
No,
know.
that's good.
I know what I think.
That is probably arbitrary, yeah.
Yeah, it was just kind of one of those like, I'm just picking a name here. Hey, my name is,
Slim Shady.
yeah, okay, seriously.
You did. I mean, you went with my name is.
Wait a minute. The part of the story that he couldn't come up with is a name. Any name. He just froze. He's like, I'm going to pick any name. Oh, I got nothing. You got just pick a name.
I have a
Steve,
I have
You
a-
already used today, so
Yours
I couldn't
is-
use
yours
that
is
one.
Frank.
That
I was
was
gonna say, I have a
already-
default name. It's always Frank.
Yours is Frank.
Every
Mine
story-
is Steve.
Every single story.
Every one I'm using
Even when it's a
Steve.
girl.
You know, it's funny. The
It's
reason
Frank.
the pause, I had to think of, are these all going to be offensive? Am I going to end up on some woke list because I
gosh.
picked the wrong name
Yes.
and attached it to, whatever.
100%.
And that name shouldn't be feminine or masculine or, whatever. And
Go
so-
with Harold. No one's going to get
Harold.
mad at
Okay,
Harold.
yeah.
Okay,
All right. Well, there was this girl named Harold.
I forgot it was a
Which
girl.
sucks is her nickname's Harry, which isn't great.
That's okay. What's her last name? If her first nickname is Harry, what is her last name, Joe?
She's Jewish.
Okay.
So it's Lipschitz is her last name.
I'm
and
fine
they
with all this.
they shorten it
Yeah.
whenever they talk about her. They shorten it up.
Oh,
every
okay.
time.
Okay. All right.
To
So
lips.
Harriet Lipschitz is talking.
Yeah, and she was just one of those like, hi, I'm Harriet, and Jesus loves me, and He loves you, and that's just who I am, and all
That
that
was
kind
like
of
the
stuff.
start of her conversation.
Pretty much, yeah. And she just, when they asked about anything about her as a person, she kind of would, default back to that and how her life is way better as a result, and kind of, a mini testimony. And it wasn't, I don't know, like you wouldn't be annoyed if you met this person kind of thing. But as a business owner, they had to really think like, does this, and they were very, as a business, they were very not in that direction.
Right.
And so they really had to say like, is this the best person for us that should be interfacing with our
Did they produce
clientele who-
porn? Was this Pornhub? It was Pornhub. So I do understand a clash of
No,
morality.
they paused and they said, "Well, we'd open up a new client base.
Oh, so very much. Actually, I doubt it.
Old client base.
Yeah.
We'd hit our main client base.
That is more like it. We would actually tap into the market. Yeah, that we already have.
Those,
So you probably
those
already know this.
Those pastors feel more comfortable talking to her.
100%.
So, we have to do a lot of research on Google search and all the stuff and all the trends. Do you guys know the state with the most porn search and volume?
State? Let's take
The
a guess.
state of the U.S.
It's going to be the most conservative in my
I
opinion.
would say Florida if they knew how to use computers.
Right.
But that's
I like,
so they're
I like
out.
it because of the size of the state, too. So if it's going to be most, it's
Yeah.
going to be
and
population.
the shape of, plus the shape of the
That's
state,
right.
Florida.
I'm going to go Texas.
So I was going to say Texas, but then I actually
Probably
would
Florida.
think California.
It's probably Florida.
I'd be shocked if
But
it's not
I'm
California.
going to go Texas, but it's probably Florida.
Utah.
Oh.
No, it's not.
To the point now where some of the
Are you talking about per capita?
Yeah, per person.
no,
yeah.
we're talking.
By volume,
volume.
you're telling me that
'cause
Utah.
Utah-
Maybe
like-
I need to go back and double check the
Utah
stats.
has like
but
19 people. I know it's more than that.
that,
I mean,
but
it's
that
not
was
a-
my
it's not a
question.
populous-
Comparatively, I can't even imagine them being able to search that much compared to California.
I mean, if you are trying to determine what your next 9 wives look like,
What's the right database to go
it's the
for?
place.
what it
Yeah.
So much so that some providers of that industry will put a gate so that kind of like, if you go to a site, even Reddit, right? You go to a certain subreddit or you 18, you have to, do the little age gate that now they have one
I
for
haven't been to-
Utah, a Utah
I haven't
gate
been to
where
those
you go there and they're like, hey,
You have
just
to
so
put
you
in your
know-
driver's license now.
Oh, that I haven't
So
heard. That's
there's a new one.
It's
I don't
not-
know if that's
it's not-
Utah,
It's
though.
Louisiana.
Yes.
It's Louisiana.
Louisiana, and you actually have to enter in
It's
like.
being fought, but it
Yeah.
is the.
I thought that was amazing
Actually, I was told I couldn't cover that story on the radio.
because it dealt with porn.
No, I don't know why.
Because
I
it
think
dealt with Louisiana.
Yeah, probably.
It's one of those. That's
it was-
that's the third topic that's
the
off
article
limits.
I was looking at was was responses from people in the industry, in the adult film industry. They were responding to it, and some were actually for it. They thought it was a good idea.
Here's what I thought was interesting is that I'm not as a like I don't look at porn. I am not like
anymore this morning.
Well, no, I meant during the podcast.
Oh, during the
That's
podcast,
actually why
okay.
my
That's
the
what keeps-
cameras
camera
went
keeps
off.
cutting
off. Oh, is that
Every
why?
time I had to
Okay.
check something.
Every time the
real
camera
quick.
comes off, you
Yeah. Really? Is that what you went with? You couldn't even say cuts
Freudian.
off? Yeah, that
Freudian.
was the
That's
most
so Freudian.
have I ever heard.
That is so Freudian. You're bleeping that, by the way.
100%.
Because people are like, "What did he say about
What
the
did he
cameras?"
say? I go ahead and look at porn if you're 40 and whatever. When you're 12, I'm like,
Oh, man.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's developmentally hindering you. So I love having something set up like that. I really do. Yeah.
If you're
And so
watching
it's-
this and you're not a Christian, I think forget all the other parts of it. Just physiologically, I think it is a really major cause of
Yeah.
ED.
For sure.
Absolutely, and the
It's
secular
a
world is
bad-
finally
it's
catching on.
bad.
to
I
it.
was going to
You're
say,
actually getting,
it's not that you think it. It's
Yeah.
there's more scientific data than we ever know.
The no
The
fapping.
An
for non-believers.
18-year-old physically fit male to have ED is shocking, and it's all linked to porn and masturbating. The no fapping movement, it was a secular movement.
Yeah,
Because the
absolutely.
Christians are like, we're going to keep fapping.
Yeah.
Like, we will fap all day long. That's a totally different world. But
Fapping
yeah.
heaven.
Fapping in heaven.
I was in a place in my life, and when I first got to college, I was a pretty new Christian at the time, and it was all it was past the burn your secular music era.
Oh, yeah.
It was after
I
that.
did it.
But
I
it was
did.
it
I
was
burned it.
It was like in our circle of our school, it was this big on like confession. Everybody's confessing things like as a way to inspire others. I
Was there
confessed.
somebody that went too far?
I confessed.
It was Joe.
I
it was
confessed porn and masturbation in front of our entire chapel.
Wow.
Did you really?
Was that the last time you were allowed to go?
Yeah.
Or oddly,
People
he
actually-
became class
I-
president.
Yeah, people are like,
Yeah.
What sites are you not looking at anymore?
Yeah. That's so it's I will say there's a piece of the 80s and 90s Christianity that I look back on that I'm pretty embarrassed by. Like we did some goofy stuff.
Well, it ends up being more for you, like a lot of gestures end up becoming more for you than they are for other people, and you don't know it at the time, but it ends up
It's
being-
interesting, and if you don't know it, is it? That's what's
Well,
kind of
well,
interesting.
that's what I think-
because you're trying.
Right, because I was trying to be transparent and humble. It's all new to me.
It's what I love most about God is that God's like, I see through everyone's bullshit.
Right.
And I really do look at the heart and the motive. So even though you're doing something so stupid, like burning your MC Hammer cassette tape, He's like, I know what your heart is, and I love you for it,
But
and I will
most
actually
people-
bless those stupid things.
The
that you're
difference
doing.
was people were burning those MC Hammer cassette tapes for different reasons.
He was so good. He was so you
I'm
couldn't
jo- I'm
even
joking. I
touch.
loved
You
it.
couldn't touch it.
I showed up.
That's how good he was.
I showed up to like Willow. I don't even know if I was a Christian at the time, and they're playing the Pray on MC Hammer.
so
playing
good.
the song. And I remember being like, I'm a non-Christian. I'm walking into a youth group, and I was just like, oh, okay,
All right.
okay.
Isn't
Like,
that
this-
funny?
This is all right.
And then it happened so much that then became cheesy.
Well, then it
for
got down
Christians
to
play
then it came
secular
down to
music.
the three, Christian signaling secular songs in the world, and those were just being played around the clock. Here's
100%.
These three we are okay with.
So it was so
Although
good.
that church was not about burning the CDs.
No, not at all. They were
doing
actually
that.
the opposite of that.
We
yeah.
in church
They were
offering
burning copies of the CD.
the opening of every service was a secular song. It was a
wow.
lot of U2.
Okay.
Well, they were all about what they call it, seeker sensitive.
Yeah.
That was their term.
So they weren't trying to.
Yeah. And then I remember that every church I worked at was like seeker sensitive is evil. Like they were so far in the conservative realm.
It turned on them fast.
It did.
It turned on them real fast.
And it was so funny because I'm like, but their heart was so good. Like, we
I
want to
will at
love
least
people.
say-
And then the Christians just
Because I was there,
butchered them.
I will
Yeah.
at least say at Willow Creek's World, and just saying is they had their model was you were going to attend two services. One was the seeker sensitive service on Sunday morning, and they basically said you have two services every week. Why don't you attend? Then there was called midweek, and they would just go through Scripture, just teach through Scripture.
That's what's interesting.
that
they
was their
still had
model.
they still had a hard discipleship.
Yeah, they weren't. So not whether you agreed with it or not, it was still they had a model. They were saying this is not everything. This is an introduction to Christ, and then join us on Wednesday or Thursday, and which was massively attended.
Yeah,
It wasn't like it
yeah.
was small. So, and then they're the ones who created small groups. So you're like stupid seeker sensitive, but they
It's
also
shaping
created
our
small
Christian
groups.
culture
Yeah.
tremendously. Yeah.
All right, we were talking about you hiring people. So you said
Yeah.
Harriet, she was. So the whole question came back to was, would you hire somebody in your secular world if they were a flat earther or something like that?
Yeah, again, I think if they can do the job, don't really care the rest. If they're talking to every client all the time about whatever their loony position is, I mean, then maybe we've got an issue. But
I'd be the
you
same
know.
way if they were just like about the Raiders all the time. Like, hey, how's it going,
Yeah,
guys? Did you catch that Raider game?
exactly.
Fired.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Do you know nobody? This doctor does not care. The 1 in 300 doctors you talk to that actually likes the Raiders is not a good ratio. To
I
keep
am
around.
really intrigued by the thought of, okay, your thing is Jesus, and you're even a great Christian. Like Harriet's a wonderful person. She sounds wonderful, but even as a Christian, I'm like, hey man, I needed you to talk to this person about their transmission breaking, and you never spoke about that. You only talked about Jesus. You can't do your job.
Right.
That's such a weird thing to be like, as a Christian, I don't want to hire you because you talk about Jesus all the time.
Did you ever try to work your Christianity into a secular job? Were you ever like you're there because you're like did you like consciously think through it and then apply? How do I represent Christ here? Other than just being a good, I think that you start there. By the way, I think.
For sure.
I used to say
Good
this all the
worker,
time.
yeah.
If you want to hand out tracts on Halloween, then you're giving out full candy bars. I used to tell my church that.
Yeah.
If you're giving out tracts, you're giving out full candy bars. So the ratio I always thought was, I thought it was interesting that some Christians wanted to talk about Jesus at work, but not be the best worker. So I always thought,
Yeah.
start with being
exactly.
the best worker.
Yeah.
Be the
Exactly.
biggest earner. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, start there, and then, because I think work is if working for the Lord, and then, now how else?
Yeah. I've always, every job I've ever had, that was a primary focus. It always started with, I want to be the best here, because now, like, my bosses will even listen to me, what I say. There's a lot more grace that they give me because I'm like, I will be your hardest worker. Most of the time, though, my idea of like evangelism, though, is so different, especially now, in that evangelism for me isn't, I'm going to always talk about Jesus. I'm going to be the nicest person you've ever met. I'm going to be the kindest. I want to make you laugh.
I'm going to be the best listener.
I'm going to be
know
the
your
best. Yeah,
story.
exactly.
I mean, that's the,
And when that's the case, then I'm simply asking God, you open the door, and I'm not going to bring God up unless I feel like the door's been opened.
Right.
And so then I will, and I have no problem with it. And if they're like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I read that wrong. Like, I totally read the room wrong. I apologize.
Yeah, as if you went for like a kiss on a first date and you're like, oh, I'm sorry.
But that's what I do
sorry.
with evangelism also.
You
I go in
absolutely
for a
should do the holy
kiss, and I'm, 100%.
Yeah.
I actually
said to do it,
carried
so.
my Bible in my hand when I worked at a sporting goods store. Like it literally.
So obnoxious.
I know, and it was so sincere. And
Yeah.
God, and here's the funny part: is God used it, and then of course I'm in the place you're in now. I'm like, oh, I didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
God's used me probably more,
Right.
not doing it that way.
Sure.
But at the time it was weird how God used it and gave me favor with my bosses. But again, I started with, I'm going to work the hardest.
Right.
You're never gonna hear me say that's not my job.
Yeah.
I think if you wanna not advance in your company, just keep saying that.
Yeah,
That's not my
exactly,
job
yeah.
description.
Right. Yeah, that's
Just
great.
keep saying that.
The one time I was really thinking about like actively trying to bring God into something is my YouTube channel where I do woodworking and blacksmithing, and I really was like, I'd like to use this as an instrument to even share at some point and trying to figure out how to do it. And the solution I came up with was once a month or something, I was going to highlight a nonprofit, any nonprofit, and I was just going to like do a quick snippet at the end of each video for the week. Like that month, I'd be like, we're supporting Fresno Rescue Mission this month, and talk about them a little bit. Our friend had a nonprofit called Made for Them, which worked in human trafficking, anti-human trafficking. She didn't traffic people. And
It's a good distinction.
That'd
be quite the nonprofit. I'm pretty sure it's for-profit.
It's for-profit at that
There
point.
was a news story out. Though,
There was it's
that-
horrible.
That did not go well for them. But
we still need to
the
talk
lady
to
actually
her.
said that they were being trafficked.
It was so
but like
it
for,
was weird.
for promotion.
I don't know
that's
all
right.
of
I
the
remember something.
I don't know all the information yet though. But I was going to highlight them and then work that in because I'm like, I don't want to be like, and today's episode is sponsored by Jesus. So watch how to make this bench, and I'll talk about Jesus. I'm
He
like,
was a carpenter. I feel like it was a lot
Say
easier
it all
than
the
you made
time.
it. I feel like you made it very difficult.
I
feel
get
like it was really easy.
the amount of times I get people saying that because people are like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a lead pastor and I have like a woodworking and blacksmithing business." And they're like, "Oh, following in his footsteps, are you?" And I'm like, "Oh God, this is exhausting."
So,
Hold on. The one thing that I was going to say about that is I cracked a joke about somebody's name once. I can't remember what their name was, and I was like, "Oh, like this guy." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Just so you know, if you meet somebody, don't say the first thing that comes to your mind." I have taken that for decades because I'm like, "Oh, he's right." Because if the first thing that comes to your mind, it also came to everybody else's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone says it. You be the guy who doesn't say it.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
a
I'm
good
like,
point.
first thing that comes to my mind, I'm always like, I'll see you later. You already know. Okay.
but you're pretty clever. Maybe a new twist on what you know they're already going to say.
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's
Like,
fair.
I like it.
They're like, "Hi, my name's Jesus." Do you mean like the guy who mows my lawn? Oh, that's super
Yeah.
racist.
They're like, no, that's totally what everybody
That's
says.
super racist, sir.
All right, what were you going to say?
I don't know. Who cares?
I don't know.
right, good
How was Jesus as a carpenter, do you think? And did he cut corners and just do miracles instead? Was he like,
That's so
Why
funny.
does
he's
that
like,
gotta-
I'm so
why does that gotta be
tired
cutting
of
corners?
sawing, and he's
Why
just
isn't
like,
that why isn't that
you
the
know.
why isn't that the upsell?
that's
I
a good
can
point.
make this,
That's a good point.
or I could wave my hand and it'll be the best thing you've ever had
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
for an extra.
I mean, was
What's
he known
funny-
for his
Shekels.
carpentry, or was
I've-
everyone like, dude, do not buy from Jesus? Like, he
not
is
buy
the worst carpenter. Great savior. He's a great savior.
He's so bad
but
he had to become the
terrible-
Messiah.
yeah.
That's because he
Yeah,
could
that's
not
what-
hack it as a
that's what it could
carpenter.
be.
He couldn't do
That
it.
could
He's
be.
just like, I can't make furniture
He's like,
anymore. Who wants to go to heaven?
I better
Ah,
forgive
jeez.
everyone of their sins because
Exactly.
I cannot make a table for
Here- the hard
to save
talk,
my
they're
life.
like, they're
to
like-
save my life or your life.
His family's like, you're out of your mind. You know, they come there to take him back because all the stuff he's doing. Here's the hard talk. They're like, listen, we know you tried carpentry. It wasn't great.
It wasn't great.
Now you're telling people you're the savior. Hey, just so you know, your wine was amazing. Maybe
true.
maybe a winery.
Just a heads up. Maybe pick a lane. Just a piece of advice. Pick a lane. You don't have to do everything.
Everybody loved that wine.
That wine
I'm
was
just
delicious.
saying, just take the evidence.
Top shelf
Just-
wine.
Just go. That's the best.
Call it the Savior's Brew. Whatever you want.
Whatever you
Just
wanna do.
something that we can all enjoy.
That's right.
His tables broke all the time. They were all uneven and wobbly. Oh, God, it's so annoying.
And what I love in that whole interaction, right? Because his mom's like, hey, there's no wine. Like, go fix it, right? And he's like, he's like, you can tell he's kind of annoyed, right? He's like, why? It's not my time.
Yeah.
Like, don't bother me with this, right? But clearly she knows. And so, like, what are the other things that he's done? And is it only related around wine? Does his mom only know that he's good at making wine and that's the only thing he could fix? Or is he like, no, I could fix anything? Like,
She didn't mean it as a miracle either. She was like,
Go buy some.
Yeah,
wine.
maybe,
Literally,
yeah,
go
maybe she's
get
just
some
like,
wine.
yeah, go get some.
Yeah.
Next door.
and the whole wedding party all just thought he went and bought it.
Yeah.
They had no
Yeah.
idea
Yeah.
he actually
Literally-
performed
they
it.
didn't realize he was that rich from his carpentry, and he just
100%.
went and bought the best
Right,
stuff.
exactly.
Literally, they
Yeah.
don't report at the end when they go back to the donkey they arrived on. She points to all the sacks of wine. She's like, "What am I going to do with these? We brought this wine.
We brought all. I
And
told you to
didn't-
go out and get it.
Did-
I told you to go to the donkey and get the wine.
What is happening? We have to bring these. This not going to last to go back.
And then that's where the old and new wineskins came from. He's like, my mom got so mad at me because I put the wine for the wedding. It's super annoying. I do actually. I've thought about it a lot because I've always thought like, I would love.
When you're making it, you're like, what would Jesus do
What
with
would
this
Jesus
wood?
do? I genuinely want to. I'm like, What did he?
Jesus-
What would
Jesus do?
What would Jesus
Yeah.
do? Spelled OOD is
Yes,
actually
yes,
funny.
Yes.
That's
What
the name-
would Jesus
That's the
do?
slogan of his carpentry
Yeah.
business.
What
100%.
would Jesus do?
But I have thought like,
Solomon advising.
that's how creative we are. See how witty Solomon is? You have no idea.
This brought to you by Harry Lipschitz.
What Harriet? It's Harriet.
Harriet Lipschitz.
What are the things that he made?
Yes, this is
I'd
what
be
I want to know.
so intrigued.
Yes.
I
And
actually-
was it just super run of the mill, or was it like super creative?
See, I want to go
right?
the other way with Jesus.
'Cause
He's
why
like-
is there
he's
no
super
writings on-
rugged? You know what I mean? Like he's more grizzled. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of like,
Yeah.
So they knock on the door. He's like, "Come on in. We're working through this table right now."
He,
you know what I mean?
he
Like,
chopped off his pinky.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, like-
doing some,
Oh, he's
like,
totally
got
missing
some sort of
he-
accident.
The weird part is he cut off his fingers all the time. He just grew
He
them
just
back.
grew 'em back.
He was
funny.
like, I keep doing
Yeah,
this.
he's like, here, you can keep this. As a
Yeah, this is
souvenir.
a souvenir for you.
it's funny.
It's going to be worth a lot one day. Trust me.
It's funny is when I think about
Careful,
that,
it's gonna get
that
up and walk away.
That scenario with his mom, I think that's actually that is consistent with his theology on God, which is his mom annoys him into doing something, and then he tells a parable about a woman who annoys a judge, and God does it. I'm like, there's
That
a
is
lot of
funny.
annoying God into
Yeah.
shit.
He
So,
does.
Get
so
annoy
women
him into
even
things.
nag Jesus, is
There's
what
like-
you're
he's-
saying.
He's just like, just be a nag to God. That's your theology.
That's one of the parables that has caused me the most pause because I'm like, I'm confident he doesn't mean nag God. But that's totally the way that parable reads.
And
It totally
it's
is.
a 3-parter. The other one is, you know, when you got relatives in town and it's late at night.
They're bugging, and you don't
You
want to
go
let them
bug
in.
the neighbors. You go
Yeah.
bug the neighbors to give you some food for them. You're like,
It's so funny.
There's a lot of nagging.
There
happening.
is, and I know that's not what he means, but it sure reads like that.
That's your prayer life is a nagging life.
Sure does.
God's like, just shut up.
Oh,
Here,
fine.
just have it.
Here's a raise at your
Oh
job.
my
Shut
gosh.
it. God, it's annoying.
All right, I got to pee.
That was fun.
Excellent. This has been Sacrilicious. If you don't have anything nice to say, you're in the right place. Thanks for joining us today. Again, I'm Mike.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm from Willow Creek, in case you don't like this podcast. That's the church to associate with.
Or you don't like Willow Creek.
Send us all your mean comments. We would
Oh.
like to be roasted.
Topics. We'd love to hear what you guys want to hear us kind of talk about.
We
And
did one question today.
one
Yeah.
question,
And
and
clearly that was too much.
it led everywhere.
Yeah.
We got to Sasquatch, aliens,
Sunsquatch.
flat Earth, Sunsquatch.
Harriet.
And
It really
then,
went.
And then fart like no body eternal beings.
And we all promoted
That's a-
stuff
that's
that
a
we
Rick
do.
and Morty
Except for
reference.
Joe. Joe actually didn't do any self-promotion today.
Yeah, well, he's
Yeah.
got nothing to promote.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm going to be the last Qumranian in this podcast
Yeah,
for sure.
excellent.
We, I really, honestly, I really do want to work on that, the screenplay more.
Yep.
It's so, I just keep hearing stuff where I'm like, this would make such fun sci-fi, being that it's like based in what a ton of people think and is like our reality. We could do the best sci-fi. It'd be so fun.
It's so fun.
Stay tuned for Jesus and I don't know what we'd call it. What did we had a name? Didn't we have
It's
a
got
working name?
It's got a working title.
What was it?
It's like 7 scripts ago. I don't know.
I can't remember exactly. I was like, it was so long
It's
ago.
we wrote the descriptions, the arcs.
Yeah, we wrote everything. It
I
was so fun.
I don't know.
All right. Well,
That's great.
we love you guys. See you next week.